So, should we start with Bionicle?
I was thinking about it. So apparently it's like a Lego toy that like the kids play with and it's like a Gundam but like Legos.
And there's characters and there's like a whole property and movies and stuff. Yeah. Um. So, who am I to ignore a nice alley oop whenever it's tossed up into the air, right? You know me. I'm always down for that. It's a free one. However, I'm curious because I have a thought on the matter, but I'm curious as to how it even. Why are we talking about Bionicle?
Oh, that's easy. I was looking at the videos on the internet and there was one that was like a bunch of action figures and I thought it was somebody's cringe Warhammer uh like skit video that was like some kind of goth IHOP thing
Mm-hmm.
and I'm like, whatever. And I skipped it. And everyone's like, you don't know what Bionicles fucking is? I'm like, I don't know. I think I might have heard the name once or twice, literally ever in my entire life.
Okay.
And I was like, did people know what this is? And then Paige looked at me like I was crazy. And then everybody said I was crazy. And I'm like, how am I supposed to know about these TV shows I never heard of?
Okay. Because yeah, I assume that it must be an urgent situation when I'm getting texts about the situation at whatever point. However, I know about Bionicle because I grew up with Lego, played a bunch of it, and then I remember when I was growing older, they started introducing the Technic line of Legos, which was
I remember that.
the exactly right. Those were towards the sort of the advanced, more complex ones, and then Technic eventually did evolve into the Bionicle, which is the whole like IP with characters and stuff behind it. Thing is, though, and this is just the honest truth, by the point at which I would say you're what year were you born?
86.
86. I'm 85. By the point at which that
Yeah, I
came
was
out,
14 when this came out.
we were on our way out of high school and going into college. So the honest
Yeah.
truth is the timeline of Bionicle not lining up with you makes perfect sense.
What like what
I'm stepping in to say here,
it
you
was a
are.
TV show.
It makes perfect sense because my friends as well, everyone that I knew growing up at that age, was not that Bionicle was coming out as people were going into college, getting out of like toys and things like that. So the age difference of the 10 years between you and the people you're speaking to is going to make the difference there.
I like
What I,
how everyone's going nuts because you said 14 getting ready to leave in high school, go to college. Like you graduate from high school in Quebec at 17. I was halfway through high school when I was 14 years old.
well, look,
But also I vividly remember I had already stopped watching television at that age and had switched entirely over to bootleg VHS tapes and insanely long downloads off of like LimeWire and torrent
I had
sites.
to be perfectly honest with Paige and just go, and and I was like, yeah, no, the timing of when that dropped was the mid aughts. In 2002 or so, I was graduating, going into college as well. That specific era of me playing with Legos was like the 90s, and I remember
Yeah, I stopped playing with Legos when I was like 8 or 9. I want to
right.
say.
And then I remember in my teenage years, I saw ads for Technic, but I didn't get into it. But I saw it. I remember
Yeah.
that was the thing. I was like, oh, okay, they're getting into more advanced stuff. And there was a big race car that you could build, like an RC type thing. Um,
Uh-huh.
and then by the time I started seeing the introduction of the brand that is Bionicle, I was off of TV already. It was just coming out as I was moving into
Yeah,
like torrent
I'm
life and cord cutting entirely. So
I feel like it's I feel like a lot of the blind spots that I've encountered where people are like, you don't know this, are 10 years younger than I am. and two, um, I don't know how it is for the younger generation, but when I was at a certain age, if you were into like games or Japanese anime or whatever, you basically just gave up on television in your mid-teens
Mm-hmm.
entirely.
Yep.
I haven't watched TV for real since I was like 12 years old,
Mm-hmm.
and thus there are a lot of blind
Mm-hmm.
spots.
But
Like you don't like
that's when the Naruto torrents started. Yeah, that's essentially, you know.
the last thing that the last piece of TV that I came home and watched with my mom was 9/11.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now,
Like to put that into context with people.
but
No, hold on. Everyone's screaming it's not a TV show. But how would I have known about it had I not seen a commercial? I was not going to toy stores or talking with children about Legos.
so I remember the TV commercials for Bionicle, and I remember that was as I was getting out of TV essentially, right? So that's what I'm saying is like, you know, the unfortunate, less entertaining, boring real answer is no. You were at the age where it makes sense, where you might not have heard about it given the trajectories we've had. And if you were younger by about 10 years, which a lot of the people here are, it would be right in
Clearly.
line with when you would be playing with stuff, right? Because conversely, I assume that unless parents gave them their old Legos and passed it down or
Yeah.
something, a lot of these folks didn't play with the older retro Lego sets that were from
Yeah.
the early 90s, that it wouldn't line up with you from that point, you know, or the
Also,
80s.
there's another part of this that we have to consider, which is um, the rampant, the rampant confusion that happens every time one of these blind spots come up. Which is, how do you not know about this? And every single time I go, well, how did you, person I'm talking to,
Mm-hmm.
find out about this thing? It is like, well, my friend told me
Mm-hmm.
this, and it's like I didn't know anybody that was into it. And they go, well, I used to watch a guy on YouTube, and
Mm-hmm.
he mentioned it or whatever. And it's like I don't watch anybody on YouTube and never have ever.
Yeah,
And then
no.
it's like, well, a streamer that I liked, well, I don't watch anyone's streams ever. And
Like,
that's where it gets actually extra crazy. Where the actual more insane thing is that me to the highest degree, but you also to some degree, like I don't watch people's fucking streams or videos or
right.
YouTube channels or any ever.
Now, there
Which
are
is why I
times.
didn't know about the GTA thing or the fucking
Well, now there are times when, like, just based on, I suppose, like the fact that what we do is focus on video games, it makes it. I will take the heat for something like PUBG, you know, sneaking
yeah.
up.
Really,
That's embarrassing.
that was
That's
a big blind spot.
that's
Yeah,
a yeah,
that's
that's
why
a
you
horrible
see
blind
me
spot.
streaming like early access trash at random every couple of weeks because I
Stay
don't
on
want
the
to miss
pulse.
the next
Yeah.
big thing.
But I'm gonna, like, the reasonable thing is just like, yeah, this is the methods, the avenues with which you would have heard about it don't exist, and don't at that age and at that particular method of media consumption, right? And it's just, and the thing is of course, is that it's the same going backwards, right? Like, I don't know, like, drop your 80s cartoon references, you know, if you would, and that's gonna fly over heads. But some people might have heard, but probably haven't sat down and watched, I don't know, episodes of Saber Riders and the Star Sheriffs, Mask, Dino Riders,
Oh, jeez.
fucking, you know what I mean? Like, there's a point where you're like, yeah, you're gonna see a screenshot, maybe a YouTube video of a 2-minute thing for it at one point, but yeah,
I'm seeing folks say that there were trailers in films. I don't remember ever seeing a Bionicle trailer in a film.
yeah. So right off the bat, I say Dino Riders, and people go, "Oh, you mean
What's
Spider
that?
Riders?" And this is exactly the point. Let's take a look at those years. You know, I'm just gonna be real with these things, man. Spider Riders. I remember I was like probably in my late teens to 20s, if not, and it was coming out on Teletoon, a channel that only existed when we were in like grade 9 or so. Teletoon started,
Yeah.
right? So, like, it's the ultimate in like new age stuff. Yeah, 2006, 2007, right? That's so far into like
Yeah,
us
no,
being like in
the
our 20s
fucking
at that point.
the time period was, if Bionicle came out in 2000, then I would have been too busy selling my classmates' pirate PlayStation 1 games to watch this, and then once I went to Sejep, I was too busy watching people's entire binders of bootleg anime
So
to fuck it
So
like.
and here's the thing, right? Saber Riders and the Star Sheriffs is too early for both of us, but that is because of my cousin and my older brother. I know about it through them, so that's more their lined up interest because that's 1987. That's 2 years after
Yeah.
I was born. Right? It's like, why would I wake up and be alive, and then the first thing I see is this anime? That'd be crazy. So it's like you have to have something around you to either show you something slightly before your time, or you got to have someone who's your peer showing, or you got to be sitting down watching it
I
yourself
have
and taking that in. You
I
know?
have a question though. Why is the answer to me not knowing about a Lego spin-off toy anger?
Well,
Why mad?
I mean,
Why mad about me not know about brand of toy?
but the vibe I got was that Bionicle was really successful when Lego introduced it as a reintroduction of Lego to a new generation of kids, right? Lego as a thing was just kind of like, you little figures, you build them, you do stuff, you have fun. That's all there is to it. But like that was a particularly successful new thing that was introduced in the mid aughts, and it blew up. So, now, if I'm not mistaken, they did things with that property. Was there not like animated? Was there's comics? Was there not a movie? There was a movie, right?
I'm gonna assume,
Yeah,
based on the intensity of the reaction,
yeah.
that there was everything.
Yeah, there was a lot of stuff. There was a 2016 show that came out, okay, from a couple years ago. Yeah, I mean it was very successful, you know.
Oh,
So Lego rebranded itself by that point, but for me, it was the suitcase full of random colored bricks and stuff that like my brother got, and that was just kind of like inherited ultimately. Um, and Twitter and Tumblr had a big Bionicle revival. There you go. Okay, so that's it. It's just, guys. It's just an age generation thing. There's stuff that's gonna not pop
Pat,
up to you.
no, there's a detail. There's a detail. There's a detail that
Mm-hmm.
I didn't put together.
Mm-hmm.
There was a Bionicle PS2 game that came out in 2003 that was bad.
Mm.
And I saw the cover and asked someone if that game was good, and they told me it was not good. And then I imprinted the name that I now knew
I see.
and went okay, and then went erase
Mm-hmm.
and just went no.
Out of curiosity, I like, hands up if you heard about Reboot from me as opposed to catching it on your own beforehand, and I just reminded you of it.
Yeah, no, I knew.
You knew.
I think what's really a shame is that everybody talk about Bionicle, but nobody talk about the all-time classic, The Littlest Hobo, featuring London the dog
Oh
solving
yeah.
mysteries
Oh,
in
I
rural
mean,
Ontario.
you've talked about that, and they've heard about the Littlest Hobo, and that everyone's freaked out at the name of that, certainly. But then you
Love
just kind
that
of
show.
explain. Well, you just have to explain that it's Canadian Lassie, and then they go, "Oh, okay, it's just Canadian Lassie. Nothing too fancy about that." And then Wishbone,
I, I
and
would
so on.
probably say the Gmod thing is still a bigger blind spot, but
What?
I didn't
So
know
what's
anybody
that?
that was into.
Just
We're
just
doing this. We're doing this again.
no, not knowing
The
about the existence of Gmod.
Yeah, not knowing about the Gmod mods with the all that stuff and the people playing the Gmod, and we
Okay,
thought it was
yeah,
just the model poser
right.
because I
Okay.
still remember it coming out and it was a model poser.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was like, okay, cool. Now I just never have to pay attention to this ever again in my entire life
Mm-hmm.
because I don't care about posing models. And then
Okay,
it
yeah.
became big.
All right,
But
I
like,
remember that. Mm-hmm.
but I didn't know anybody who. That one was extra frustrating because like I didn't know anybody that played any of those games I ever. And
Hmm.
then when every single person that I got a hold of and asked like, well, how did you find out about this? They're like, oh, I watched so and so's videos on it. I'm like, well, there's your solution. Unless it's an hour and a half long video essay about Hong Kong cinema or Tim Rogers going to the eye doctor, I don't care to watch it.
Well, I suppose here's the other reality of the situation. If we're going to be real, we have cultivated an audience that is into like the fact that we are into things that other people don't give a shit about, like
What are you
Devil May
talking
Cry
about?
3 and
What?
ranting about character action games and ranting about fucking, you know, Gurren Lagann and uh,
You tell what?
Silent Hill and all that, you know, and all that stuff
Are
back in the
you
day.
Are you
Like
telling me that while other kids were playing with their Legos, we were studying the blade?
Yakuza and Metal Wolf Chaos and so, like all of this shit that you guys are like, oh my god, they know about and or are into that stuff, or you guys are finding out about it for the
Oh
first time,
no!
or you're peripherally like, holy shit, I can't believe someone's into that obscurity. That's also going to backfire from time to time when the Venn diagrams don't perfectly overlap, and that there's
Oh
going to be shit
no!
with age that just pushes that aside, or just the big one for me often that I bring up a lot because it happens so much when I'm getting presented with stuff is the Canadian aspect to it,
Oh
right?
yeah, no, big Canada.
The
Now,
Canada,
obviously, I'm going to assume that this particular Lego brand was also in Canada in full force.
yo, for sure, for sure. But a lot of the times, whenever something gets brought up that is like, oh yeah, no, we didn't have that up here, Canada, or even particularly even like Quebec or something, where it's just like, yeah, that was an American childhood thing. We didn't
Hey,
get that here.
you
There's not
did
much I
you
can
see that
say.
that meme going around that was like thinks Japanese games are better on ironically starter pack, and the first thing on the list is subscribe to
Yep,
these channels,
yep,
and it's you, me, Matt, Max,
yep.
Susie, I think it Butterbuns,
Hmm.
Clems, and it's like
Hmm.
oh fuck, I'm being super called out. Oh god.
I mean, in my head, it's you know what like it's like it's this is an oversimplification, but in my head, you know what the trajectory is? It's
Yeah.
grew up, got a Nintendo, got a Super Nintendo, then
Yeah.
those were the formative games, kept
Yeah.
playing those games and things like that as the generations went on. Didn't get
Hey, you
into
want to
didn't get into first person shooters, didn't get into RTSs as much, kept
It's
playing the things that were Nintendo and Super Nintendo platforming, action, third person. That's kind of the
uh,
simple line. It's
I
oversimplified. It's not
I
reality, but
saw a
that's
really
what it
great
feels like.
I saw a really great comment about this was like I can't wait for Wooly played Halo in 2021 Madden to talk to Pat about not knowing what old media was.
Perfect.
And I'm like, yeah, that's totally fucking perfect. It's
Perfect.
dead on.
Motherfucker, I just finished Dead Space.
That game came out in
You
2009.
know? That's the point. Like I have my interests. You guys like showed up hearing about those
Oh,
particular interests. That was the sphere, and then the other stuff I kind of I have a ton of
oh
blinders up
man.
about, you know? That's it.
You know, did
Absolutely.
you see
But
that
it's
at
not for lack
Gamescom
of
they had
knowing. There's a difference between not knowing
yeah.
versus like just not caring about it, you know?
Did you see that in at the Gamescom they had a booth for retro games and Rock Band was like the biggest game at the retro games thing, and
That's
people took damage, and then it was pointed out that we're farther away from Rock Band 1 now
mhm.
than like Super Mario was when Rock Band came out,
Yeah.
and I'm like, oh no,
Yeah. It's
oh I'm so
horrifying.
old.
Retro no longer means 2D sprites,
No,
fourth
retro means
generation.
Atari and sprites and shit.
Fourth generation and below for me is retro, but that's not what it is anymore, you know? So, yep. And all the Final Fantasy one, right? You know, the what was it? The distance between 1 and 10 versus 10 and now. and what you think it means when you whatever that meme was. I forget, but anyway, yeah. So no, just clearing the air on that. It's extremely reasonable and normal given your age bracket, your and surroundings, you know, and then when you're on the internet now, the beginning of that internet age, that's where everyone just branches and goes into unique directions, because whatever the fuck you were doing, like I gave up on TV and I was watching those, like I said, anime torrents and Mugen. You know what I mean? I was deep in that hole, and then
Yeah.
just yeah, well, looking up whatever fighting game stuff and old footage of arcade machines in Japan, and just like I was going down that, and that's a whole
Listen,
unique
I need
internet.
to watch.
Madman's
I need to
Cafe.
watch 144p videos off of LimeWire of guys playing Third Strike Q real good.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have time to learn about none of this.
That's it, man. You know, that's it. So that's you guys just never forget that that's what you signed up for. That's what's going on here, is the world of obscurity, and
There's gonna be more value though as we get big older and like the PS2 becomes an unknown era, and we're like, oh, I remember the PS2. What a bunch of cool games on there. Did you know the buttons had analog sensitivity? Wow.
Well, I mean, just give it a second, and you'll see that all these folks that are like, nah, man, my childhood was Crash Bandicoot, are going to meet a bunch of people that are like, fuck that, my childhood was Fortnite and Brawlhalla, and they're gonna die inside when those kids go like, what the fuck is Crash Bandicoot? You know, you just slide it
To be
along a
fair,
little bit.
yeah.